Hello students, welcome to APG Pathshala. I am Dr. Rashmi Jain, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today I shall be talking about adolescent menstrual health and community engagement. The learning outcomes of this module shall be: the students will be able to understand the following: understanding menstruation and menstrual hygiene and relationship to MDGs, which is the Millennium Development Goals. Also, understand the need to focus on menstrual health and community engagement for the promotion of menstrual health. At the Millennium Summit, sponsored by the United Nations in September 2000, the members of the United Nations reaffirmed their commitment to working towards a world in which sustainable development and the elimination of poverty would have the highest priority. The MDGs include a number of targets in the area of sexual and reproductive health. MDGs concern maternal health and aims to reduce by 3/4 the maternal mortality ratio between 1990 and 2015. Estimates by WHO, UNICEF and UNFPA for the years 1990, 1995 and 2000 indicate that more than 500,000 women die every year from complications of pregnancy and childbirth, of which more than 50% occur in Africa and 40% in Asia. Women experience a variety of discriminations, some of which become the focus of research, policy making and development programs over the decades. There is considerable action in the development sector aimed at economic empowerment, political participation and involvement in women's decision-making process, access to health and education services and against domestic violence. At the same time, a number of issues concerning women do not find their due place in these efforts. For instance, there is a failure to recognize the practical needs of women, keeping in view something as fundamental as their differing bodily needs, an issue that has long been neglected in this context by the water, sanitation and hygiene, which is WASH sector in menstrual hygiene management. This only indicates the magnitude of invisible nature of discrimination. Traditionally, women are discouraged from speaking about, openly speaking about their bodies and bodily functions, especially those related to their reproductive organs. Consequently, they are often underinformed or misinformed on issues related to the menstrual cycle, including care, management and support systems. Since women often hesitate to share their health problems, they suffer silently. Major health problems include infections of reproductive organs and the urinary tract. It is possible to prevent reproductive tract infections by following proper menstrual hygiene practices. Today, private medical doctors often perform hysterectomies indiscriminately for any complaint of such an infection. This is a considerable problem which is not acknowledged sufficiently. Important aspects of menstrual hygiene as its interrelationship with the Millennium Development Goals, wherein menstrual hygiene has rarely been acknowledged, despite it being a matter of fact that measures to adequately address menstrual hygiene will directly contribute to MDG 7 on environmental sustainability, target number 10 on basic sanitation. Menstrual hygiene also has an environmental impact in that it creates a waste problem if there are no proper management strategies at hand. Furthermore, due to its indirect effects on school absenteeism and gender discrepancy, poor menstrual hygiene may seriously hamper the realization of the MGD 2 on universal education, which is target number 3, and MGD 3 on gender equality and women's empowerment, which is target number 4. However, this issue is far from being attended to sufficiently. Traditional norms and beliefs, socio-economic conditions, and the physical infrastructure influence the practices related to menstruation. For example, according to cultural traditions, a woman must abstain from cooking and salting food as it is a taboo to do so when menstruating. Women and girls in villages and from poor families cannot get hold of and or afford sanitary pads, which would normally be changed around 2 to 4 times a day during menstruation. Instead, The majority of the women and girls use rags, usually torn from old blankets or traditional cotton shawls which African women wrap around their waists, and tissues of any kind. The rags are washed often with inadequate and unsafe water and without soap and used repeatedly. The gender unfriendly general infrastructure, especially in educational institutions, and the lack of adequate menstrual protection alternatives in terms of clean, safe, and private sanitation facilities for girls in schools undermine girls' right of privacy, resulting in a fundamental infringement of their human rights. Some of the described practices, especially when coupled with poor or lack of knowledge, are responsible for significantly high rate of school absenteeism as well as seclusion from social activities, illness and infection, and bad reproductive health of adolescent females and women. Most women's health studies which address reproductive health have barely touched upon the subject of menstrual hygiene management. They have mostly focused on safe deliveries and sexually transmitted diseases. Only in recent years has menstrual hygiene got the attention of researchers. It may be noted, however, that a majority of the studies available on this topic are limited to adolescent girls. Fortunately, they are not exotic studies. The studies carried out in recent past have discussed practical issues. The intensity of the problems surrounding menstrual hygiene is evident from the fact that 41% of women are unprepared psychologically for menstruation, according to a study in 2008. Formal education about reproductive health is very limited in South Asia. The majority of girls learn about menstruation from their mothers, sisters, and friends, and they receive information mainly regarding use of cloths, the practice of rituals, cultural taboos, and cautious behavior towards men and boys. Lack of preparedness and exposure to menstrual hygiene practices leads to unhygienic practices which may have negative impact on the woman's health. The word adolescence is derived from the Latin word adolescere, which means to grow to maturity, that indicates the defining feature of adolescence. During puberty, the physical changes occur which transform the body of the child into that of an adult, changes in the body size and changes in the body proportion. In India, about 24% of the total population belongs to adolescent period. The blossoming of adolescence in each generation is as fascinating a sight as the unfolding offspring, each year predictable and repetitive. Adolescents belong to vital age group not only because they are the entrant population to parenthood, but also because they are at the threshold between childhood and adulthood. As they attempt to cross this threshold, they face various physiological, psychological, and developmental changes. Now, understanding menstruation. Menstruation is a physiological phenomenon which is unique to females that begins in adolescence. It is also properly called menses, catamenia, and more commonly a period of monthly flow. Menstruation is not an illness, it is a healthy, normal, mature process. The ages of onset is from 9 to 16 years and termination occurs approximately every 28 days and lasts for about 5 days. Menstrual flow consists of blood, mucose, and tissue particles from the uterus. Average blood loss is about 3 ounces. Factors that may alter the menstrual cycle are stress, fatigue, exercises, acute or chronic illnesses, and changes in climate. Personal hygiene to be followed during menstruation are to use sterile pads during early period of heavy flow, bathe daily for comfort and to feel fresh, keep perineal area clean from anterior to posterior, cotton undergarments preferred. The most striking change in adolescent girls is the onset of menstruation, 3 to 5 days bleeding from the uterus once a month that will occur throughout the lifetime till menopause. The first menses is called menarche. Menarche is the signal that sexual maturation of the young female has occurred and that the body is capable of supporting pregnancy. Therefore, menstruation is a phenomenon unique to the females. Menstruation is still regarded as something unclean or dirty in Indian society. The reaction to menstruation depends upon awareness and knowledge about the subject. The manner in which a girl learns about menstruation and its associated changes may have an impact on her response to the event of menarche. Although menstruation is a natural process, it is linked with several misconceptions and practices which sometimes result into adverse health outcomes. Importance of menstrual hygiene. Adolescence is a significant period in the life of a female. Adolescent girls often lack knowledge regarding reproductive health, including menstruation, which can be due to cultural barriers in which they grow up. With the onset of menstruation, a girl becomes aware of her emerging identity as a female capable to reproduce. Her understanding and acceptance of her new identity will be greatly influenced by the feedback she receives from peers, educators, and most importantly, her parents. Menstruation occurs periodically throughout the childbearing years, except during pregnancy and lactation. The ages of onset of menstruation differs from person to person but seem to be affected by heredity, racial background, and nutritional status. Menstrual hygiene is the personal hygiene during menstruation. It includes bathing daily for comfort, using clean, dry, absorbent material, and disposal of used pads and material in clean, environmentally acceptable, safe methods, and to feel fresh. Keep perineal area clean for anterior to posterior. Hygiene-related practices of women during menstruation are of considerable importance, especially in terms of increased vulnerability to reproductive tract infections. The interplay of socioeconomic status, menstrual hygiene practices, and RTI are noticeable. Today, millions of women are sufferers of reproductive tract infections and its complications, and often the infection is transmitted to the offspring during pregnancy. Women have better knowledge regarding menstrual hygiene and safe practices are less vulnerable to RTI and its consequences. Therefore, increased knowledge about menstrual right from childhood may escalate safe practices and may help in mitigating the suffering of millions of women. Most of the girls received their gynecological information from their mothers, religious books, older sister, or a peer. However, such information was generally given after menarche rather than before. A study conducted in 2006 using qualitative research data and quantitative survey revealed that prior to menarche, the knowledge about menstruation was deficient among the respondents, and 10% of the women respondents reported various taboos related to menstruation. Hence, there is a need to provide healthy family life education to the woman, particularly the adolescent girls. Very few similar studies have been conducted in India which explored the knowledge and practice areas, but the attitudinal aspects of menstruation have not been studied specifically. There are an umpteen taboos and myths out there in the society pertaining to menstruation. Some people are even accustomed to believing that menstrual blood is dirty, unclean, or unhygienic. A few traditional practices followed during menstruation could have caused embarrassment, and a few others could have led to loss of self-esteem. It is very important to follow proper menstrual hygienic practices. The social stigma attached to menstruation causes many girls and women to carry out dangerous hygiene practices. Lacking a platform to share menstrual hygiene problems, girls and women often suffer from discomfort and infection, avoiding urination during menstruation, and using any kind of cloth available which is old and unwashed as an absorbent. These kind of practices can lead to problems like infection, boils, and itching, but still girls are not visiting medical practitioners. Globally, approximately 52% of the female population, which is 26% of the total population, is of reproductive age. Most of these women and girls will menstruate each month for between 2 to 7 days. Menstruation is a normal part of the reproductive cycle in which blood is lost through the vagina. However, in most parts of the world, it remains taboo and is rarely talked about. As a result, the practical challenges of menstrual hygiene are made even more difficult by various socio-economic factors. Now, if you look at the cultural and religious beliefs on menstrual hygiene, many cultures and beliefs have myths relating to menstruation. Almost always there are social norms and unwritten rules and practices about managing menstruation and interacting with menstruating women. Most cultures have secret codes and practices around managing periods. Many myths and social norms restrict women and girls' level of participation in the society. This can make their daily lives difficult and limit their freedom. For example, in some cultures, women and girls are told that during menstruation they should not bathe or they will become infertile, touch a cow or it will become infertile, look in a mirror or it will lose their brightness, or touch a plant and it will die. So if you look at different religious texts and what they have to say about menstruation, Buddhism sees menstruation as a normal bodily process and therefore no restrictions apply. However, some Buddhist temples restrict menstruating women from entering, possibly because of the influence of Hinduism. If you look at Christianity, the Old Testament of the Bible indicates that a menstruating woman is impure and that most things she touches become unclean. If a man touches her bed during this period, he will also become unclean and has to take a ritual bath. It is also stated that if a woman and man have sexual intercourse during menstruation, they will be disowned by the community. However, today most Christian denominations do not follow any specific rituals or regulations related to menstruation. Some restrictions still exist for particular denominations such as Russian Orthodox Christians who continue to believe in menstrual taboos. Menstruating women must be secluded during menstruation and are not allowed to attend church services or have contact with men. Coptic Christians in Ethiopia also place restrictions on women during menstruation. Menstruating women are not permitted to enter a church or kiss religious icons. In Hinduism, notions of purity and pollution determine the basis of the caste system and are central to Hindu culture, including gender relations. Bodily excretions are considered to be polluting, as are human bodies in the process of producing them. All women, regardless of their social caste, incur pollution through the bodily processes of menstruation and childbirth. There are two main ways to achieve purity: by avoiding contact with pollutants or purifying oneself to remove or absorb the pollutant. Water is the most common medium of purification. The protection of water sources from such pollution, particularly running water, which is the physical manifestation of Hindu gods, is therefore a key concern. The way restrictions are practiced tends to vary by caste, ethnic groups and geographical area. For example, one caste may restrict the washing of hair for the first 3 days of menstruation, the another for 7 days, and it is common for women not to be allowed to visit a newborn when menstruating until after the first 40 days of the child's life. For at least one caste, a woman is not allowed to wash her hair for the full 9 months of pregnancy. Women and girls are not allowed to take part in religious ceremonies or celebrations during menstruation. In Islam, for the entire duration of menstruation, a woman is considered ritually impure. She is supposed to stop certain forms of worship, for example, the 5 daily prayers, fasting during the month of Ramzan, or sitting in a mosque. She is also not allowed to touch the Quran. Recitation is allowed as long as she does not physically touch the Quran and recites it from the memory or recent adaptation or reads it from a computer. She is not allowed to engage in sexual intercourse. After a woman completes her period, she is supposed to have a ritual bath before she can resume her religious obligations. This process includes the wearing of perfume. During menstruation, a woman is allowed to live in the home as usual and to eat and drink with the family. Following menstruation, she can continue to wear clothes that she wore during menstruation as long as there is no blood on them. It is suggested practice for a woman to keep a separate set of clothes for menstruation, so her husband will know she is menstruating without them having to talk about it. The myth and hence the belief that menstruating women are unclean and polluting is widespread in the cultures of many developing countries. It includes the myth that women's excretions are considered to be polluting during menstruation. To manage menstruation hygienically, it is essential that women and girls have access to water and sanitation. They need somewhere privately to change sanitary clothes and pads, clean water for washing their hands and used cloth, and facilities for safely disposing of used material or to place them to dry if reusable. There is also a need for both men and women to have a greater awareness of menstrual hygiene. Currently, cultural practices and taboos around menstruation impact negatively on the lives of women and girls and reinforce gender inequalities and exclusion. Menstrual hygiene has been largely neglected by the water sanitation hygiene sector, which is WASH, and other focusing on sexual and reproductive health and education. As a result, millions of women and girls continue to be denied their right to WASH, health, education, dignity, and gender equity. If the situation does not change, it may not be possible for development programs to achieve their goals. A number of globally conducted studies on reproductive health found that supporting menstrual hygiene is vital for females in relation to water supply, sanitation, and hygiene education. The studies disclose that access to adequate information on menstruation and reproductive health can help girls and women in understanding their menstrual cycle and in relation thereto, practicing proper menstrual hygiene. This would enable females to live healthy, productive and dignified lives. The studies also observed the necessity of girls and women having adequate access to clean water for bathing and laundering of their menstrual paraphernalia and space for drying such materials. They also need privacy for changing sanitary napkins and proper facilities to dispose of them. Such myths have a long history. Among others, they are even sustained in the Bible, where it is mentioned that if a woman is menstruating, she should be excluded from the community for 7 days, and whoever comes into contact with her or whatever she touches is considered unclean and impure. This kind of social exclusion of women during menstruation in Jewish tradition is further mentioned. These authors like Patkar and Bhardwaj also reveal that similar taboos apply under Islamic law, wherein it is stated that menstruating women are prohibited from touching the Quran, praying, entering mosques and fasting and having sex. The study by 10 in 2007 also reports that menstruating women are prevented from moving freely and preparing food for others but themselves and for working in rice fields. Another study, this time of a person in Suriname in the western coast of South America, shows an even higher degree of exclusion than the first mentioned examples. Not only are menstruating women not allowed to do domestic work, cooking or sharing bed or room with their partner, they are isolated in separate huts at the far end of the village and they are confined to a room in the house. Furthermore, women must use their own crockery to cook their meals. After menstruation, they must wash the clothes they were wearing when menstruating and they must clean themselves using a vaginal steam bath before rejoining the family. A major concern highlighted in several studies is the impact of cultural practices related to menstrual hygiene on girls' access to education and more precisely lack of access to it. A study undertaken in South India reports a case in which half of the girls attending a school were withdrawn once they had reached menarche so that they could be married off. This is either because of the shame and danger associated with being an unmarried pubescent girl or because menstruation is regarded as a sign of readiness for marriage or because of a combination of both. In line with this, there is another study in which girls' experiences of menstruation and schooling in Kilimanjaro revealed that in sub-Saharan African societies, social pressure is so frequently employed to force girls once they have reached reproductive age to enter into early marriage, which also forces them to quit school. A cultural practice in Bangladesh is that when a girl comes of age, an initiation ritual is performed. This is considered a big occasion where relatives and friends are invited. Now in this, the girls who have come of age would be provided with gifts such as jewelry as a sign of maturity, and from a study of the social dimensions of the ritual, celebration of menarche and menstruation in India, the study reports that turmeric bathing ceremony, which is popular in Tamil Nadu in South India, is held, and also it starts imposing strict restrictions on seclusion during menstruation, where girls are confined to huts and rooms where they have to undergo the ritual bath. There are many examples of myth espousing the belief that menstruating women and their blood causes pollution. Among others, a gender survey done in West Bengal, India among Gujar communities reports the belief that menstruating females are impure and pollute the water sources. Hence, they are therefore forbidden to use them. This means that majority of the women and menstruating girls in this case would abstain from bathing. Add to this the report that many Muslim girls share the conviction that bathing during menstruation increases the flow of menstrual blood and causes complications in pregnancy. Hence, they also abstain from bathing regularly. Another study also talks about the fact that bathing during menstruation has to be avoided. It is believed that taking a cold water shower retains blood, while a hot water shower will increase the flow. Several studies show that socioeconomic status of a girl and her family can affect behavior related to menstrual hygiene. A study undertaken in West Bengal revealed that only a few of the responding girls, which is 11%, could afford disposable sanitary pads due to their family's low socioeconomic status. Hence, they used ragged and torn clothes during that period. A cross-sectional study of 117 adolescent girls and 41 mothers in Ranchi, India shows similar findings, indicating that socioeconomic status has direct influence on the menstrual practices of girls. The study made it clear that girls from rich families could afford sanitary pads easily as compared to poor families. UNICEF reports also of 2005 report similar practices among girls in Bangladesh, similar to practices in West Bengal, which are caused by poverty. To maintain good hygiene standards, it is important to kill harmful bacteria that cause infections by washing the cloth, use the sanitary pads properly with soap and water, and drying them under the sun. However, it has been shown that this is the most often not possible for schoolgirls in developing countries. The lack of necessary facilities, including safe water and appropriate toilet facilities, and the absence of opportunities and proper amenities to keep clean and change pads and menstrual clothes as needed, hinder many of the girls from putting to use proper practices of menstrual hygiene. Now I'll talk about menstrual hygiene and community engagement. Proper care is needed for girls to lead healthy, safe and dignified lives. In order to provide the necessary conditions for improving girls' conditions, there is need for all stakeholders, that is parents, teachers, children, government and the community, to act in unity for the common good and betterment of these girls. Parkar and Bhardwaj in their study also have observed that the lack of policy debate, action and investments regarding menstrual hygiene and management were widespread in developing countries. The lack of policy debates was mainly due to cultural issues, especially in Africa and Asia. The study recommended policy advocacy, investments and action in terms of education and improved facilities such as gender-friendly toilets and access to sanitary pads in order for adolescent girls and women to manage their menstrual needs adequately. It is important to educate girls about issues related to menstruation so that they can safeguard themselves against various infections and diseases. Further, emphasis also needs to be given through workshops, school classes and seminars on adolescent reproductive health. Several studies have established the link between hygiene practices and RTIs and UTIs. Women who are reusing cloths without a proper washing and drying mechanism are particularly prone to these problems. The consequences are invisible health concerns such as unnecessary hysterectomies, which need to be addressed immediately in the form of health education aimed at women. Availability and affordability are considered to be major reasons for not using sanitary napkins. Improvement in menstrual health management is possible when it is addressed as a gender discrimination issue. There is also a need to address an attitude of self-denial among women and a general attitude that women's needs come last. In other words, women and girls need to be educated in a way that they consider menstrual health management a basic need rather than a comfort, and also such that they include related costs as an essential part of household expenditure. Girls and mothers alike should be trained in making low-cost homemade sanitary pads. Any maternal and child health centers or health settings should provide health teaching for adolescents. Community campaigns using various educational material are essential to increase knowledge and awareness about menstruation among all girls and adolescents in order to identify the menstruation and the self-care practices or appropriate management. Proper awareness generation in community on negative impacts on health due to unhygienic practices during menstruation needs to be done. Training for teachers and lady health workers on concerning issues can be conducted so that they can properly motivate the society. Lack of sanitation facilities have come in the way of using a disposable sanitary napkin. Therefore, an urgent need is to improve and promote washed facilities in school and at the household level, not only from a hygienic perspective but also from a gender perspective. Proper sanitation standards should be set in schools, for example, proper water supply, soap in order to wash them, dustbins to dispose the absorbents. There should be facility for washing and drying clothes if accident of stainless happens. Protective material should be provided to girls in schools so that they can get it in case of immediate need. School girls need menstrual health material that will help them to sit and move around comfortably in a classroom for several hours. It would also be an advantage for those girls who belong to financially weak families and cannot afford such material. Link between teachers and students can be established through focus group discussions in schools. By developing a close dialogue with the girls and their female teachers in selected schools, we can further build up our background material and the facts we need to find answers to. Written educational material can be tested using practical inputs from the girls themselves. Ministry of Education in combination with Ministry of Health can introduce menstrual hygiene in the health and hygiene clubs in school. Ministry of Education can mobilize and if need be capacitate NGOs to advocate that menstrual hygiene can be included in school health programs. Counseling for overcoming cultural barriers, especially embarrassment, is required. Relevant knowledge should be included in school curriculum, especially in girl-specific subjects like home economics. Importance of taking rest should be highlighted with the permission of one to leave the students on the first day of periods of every month. Research on girl-friendly toilets should be done. Menstrual hygiene consists of more than simply napkin use. Therefore, creating infrastructure and their use and maintenance as well as gender sensitization must be given equal importance. Celebration of MHD Day on 28th May and its integration with other events, for example, hand washing day, water day and toilet day, will help to promote the issue and awareness generation. Advocacy on menstrual health issues will influence the national and international policies and decision makers to integrate menstrual health in WASH specific policies. A large-scale effort must be there to bring issues surrounding menstruation and MHM out of secrecy and out of the closet. Women-friendly language, which can be openly used, must be developed. Myths need to be addressed and clarified in order to secure women from its negative consequences. Since the major source of information is family, mainly mothers and grandmothers, both formal and informal education programs, besides educating adolescent girls, should focus on mothers and grandmothers as the main transmitters of menstrual information and knowledge. Good hygiene practices also include changing napkins often. Proper methods of disposal need to be given immediate attention as they pose a threat to other health issues. Men and boys also need to be given minimal level of awareness of menstruation to be supportive. Although not directly studied in this survey, it is expected that the inclusion of pre-menarche training in early secondary school curriculum would enable teachers to address the practical aspects of management of menses in formal classes. Development of in-service training programs for healthcare providers who take care of adolescent girls about issues related to menstruation and reproductive health is also required. This can be done by mobilizing community women and girls who are a little educated and willing to get involved as peer educators in the communities, as these are very personal taboo discussion issues and facilitation from within the community shall be a good idea. Also involving communities' elder women is needed as they can also educate their daughters and daughters-in-law about menstrual hygiene and help reduce the overall MMR. Thank you.